Whew, sorry guys, I took an unnotified 3-week break, but now I'm finally back and hopefully I can start releasing more videos in the upcoming month or so. And without further ado, today we're taking a look at an anti-vaxxer. I know there's not much else to say about this topic, but it's very important since the anti-vaccine movement is still very real.
Vaccinations. They're trying to pass a law in California called SB 277, forcing vaccines, forcing this medical procedure on everyone.
For my viewers out there, this law has already been passed in the summer of 2015. This video I'm responding to is 2 years old, so bear with me. Anyway, I wouldn't call it force, more like you can't be exempt from taking vaccinations for entry into schools and daycare centers, specifically for the excuse of personal belief. And you know why this law was passed? Due to the measles outbreak in 2014. A pretty legit response in my opinion, and I wonder why it hasn't been done sooner. But here's the thing, are you going to talk about how vaccinations eliminate diseases? Because it's not very often that anti-vaxxers talk about the benefits of vaccination. It's as if it's non-existent to them.
Now, they have an adult vaccine scheduled that they will be presenting in a couple of years. So if you're complacent and you're saying, well, it's not going to affect me, my kids are old, let's look at this. There's a little thing called informed consent. And informed consent came out of the Nuremberg trials because the Nazis were experimenting on people without their approval.
It's incredibly stupid to compare this law to Nazi Germany. If the detrimentals of vaccinations, as you anti-vaxxers describe them, exist, then sure, you have like a tiny point there. But even so, there's very minimal harmful side effects. It's not done on a specific group of people, and it's not done with the intent of harm. You know what would make this a valid comparison though? If we did something like, instead of injecting antigens, we injected snake venom, and only to like, I don't know, black people. Then you could somewhat bring up Nazis. But until something like that happens, it would be nice if you remained silent.
So let's look at this vaccine procedure. Do we have the healthiest kids in the world? Or do we have the most vaccinated kids in the world?
Okay, so we're not talking about procedures then? Great, you can't even stay on your own topic you started.
Do you realize that if you have a boy child born in New Jersey today, he has a 1 in 27 chance of developing autism?
So we're talking about autism, not autism spectrum disorder, right? Well, that doesn't really matter since I don't think you have your statistics right. The actual number is about 1 in 41 children, but I don't care about that. What I do care is why you picked New Jersey instead of California, since, you know, the law you mentioned earlier is a law passed in California. Also, why not just use statistics of the entire United States? Could it be that you're just trying to scare your viewers into listening to you, so you pick the state with the highest autism rates?
Now, you may have heard, autism isn't caused by vaccines. Autism is caused by vaccines.
You can see how much damage anti-vaxxers have done just by doing a simple Google search, does vaccinations cause autism, and the top results are sites claiming yes. Well, now it's gotten a little better. Good thing we have sites like WebMD to give us the proper information we need. I admit, for someone who doesn't have any background knowledge in medicine, biology, or vaccinations, they can easily fall into this trap. And that saddens me a little. Anti-vaxxers are a minority of the population, but they are loud as hell. Jesus fuck.
Hey, autism is just one of the diseases our kids are suffering from.
So, we're jumping topics again, are we? That's kind of annoying, but I'll keep up.
Let's look at the other ones. What about attention deficit disorder? What about bowel disorders? What about depression, anxiety? What about skin disorders? What about the allergies?
Okay, yes, these are very real diseases affecting people today, but what in Allah's name does this have anything to do with vaccinations and autism? Are you saying that vaccinations can cause these diseases too?
Think of all of these different toxic responses.
Well, shit. It looks like ADHD is a toxic response. Yeah? Oh, and depression, the most toxic response of them all. Pack your bags, boys. This guy's got it figured out. And let's not forget about anxiety. Oh my god, the toxins, they're in my body. Stress response, anxiety.
We have the sickest population the world's ever seen. And we're talking, when you ask parents how many vaccines their kids are getting, did you realize that it's 74 doses of 17 different vaccines?
I'm not gonna check your numbers, but sure, they can sound scary if you say it like that, but that just goes to show the lack of education you have. Now, I'm gonna skip a bit of the video since it's pretty long and I want to get to the main points before losing my mind.
You gotta figure, if you're injecting a vaccine, that's a Th2 response. That's an immune system response.
Oh my god, what a scary word. What in the shit is Th2? Never fear, I'm going to briefly explain it. Th cells are another way to say helper T cells, which can be divided into two categories, Th1 and Th2. The Th2 response refers specifically to the helper T cells involved in taking the obtained information from the antigen-presenting cells and signaling the B cells to produce antibodies. That's the general gist of it. What vaccinations do is that they trigger the production of antibodies, then the B cells that proliferated and produced that antibody remains in the bloodstream as memory cells. That way, when the real disease strikes, the body won't have to waste time inducing this adaptive immune response, thus eliminating the disease often before symptoms start. That's the power of vaccinations. Let's hear what you have to say now.
That triggers an inflammatory response.
Well, no, more like the other way around. The inflammatory response triggers the Th2 response. You generally don't see Th2 response result in more inflammation. Inflammation is the first line of defense and is responsible for the release of macrophages into the target tissue. The macrophages then act as antigen-presenting cells to signal helper T cells for a Th2 response. At this point, I don't know if you just made a minor mistake or if you actually didn't know the biosignaling pathway. The second thing I would like to point out is your mentioning of inflammation. It's often seen by many people that inflammation is bad. It causes allergies, autoimmunity, and a lot of bad things. However, what people don't understand, and you're taking advantage of, is the fact that inflammation in moderation is what we need. Without inflammation, our body wouldn't be able to fight off foreign pathogens. So when we say that vaccines work to trigger inflammation, that's not a bad thing. It means we are stimulating the immune system. Too much inflammation can be bad, yes, but so is a lot of things. Don't be scared when you hear the word inflammation.
So we're training these bodies to respond to environmental stimulus with an inflammatory response.
You have the inflammatory response first, yes, but we're not training the body to use an inflammatory response for future infections. See, once the vaccination is completed, the body is left with memory T and B cells. This is the adaptive response, and they will be the main line of defense against future pathogens. In other words, there would be less inflammation in the long run.
Is that why there's more inflammatory diseases coming on in our population?
No.
Well, I'll tell you right now, the vaccine companies aren't liable as long as the vaccine is listed under the umbrella of recommended vaccines, and the doctor that shoots you with the vaccine is no longer liable.
Well, I don't see how that has very much to do with what you were talking about right before this. Really, you gotta stop jumping topics back and forth. And also, why do you say they're not reliable? You don't provide any explanation for this.
So, you have a toxic, dangerous procedure forced on you.
Not toxic nor dangerous.
With no recourse if your body gets injured or damaged.
Actually, there's a lot of recourse. When you take a vaccination shot, have you ever had to wait there for 10 minutes or so? Well, that's because they watch you for a bit in case you get a severe allergic reaction. If you do, then the doctors will take the necessary steps to treat the allergy. If you don't get an allergic reaction immediately after a shot, you won't get it days or years down the road. So when you say there's no recourse, that's just a lie.
What about the walking wounded? With the allergies, the asthma, the depression, the digestive disorders. Okay? We have a sick population. We need to actually look at the hard science.
An anti-vaxxer saying to look at the hard science? The fucking irony. And this whole time you've been saying, oh, look at the rates of autism, look at the rates of autoimmunity, look at the rates of whatever. But you have to realize that even if what you said is true, correlation does not mean causation. Moving on.
When we look at transmission, does a vaccine make you less of a carrier? No.
What? You do realize that that's the concept of herd immunity, right? When you get a disease and you've been vaccinated, your body will be able to fight off the disease before you are able to transfer it to other people. So when everyone gets the vaccination, they protect people who are too old or allergic to get a vaccination shot. You are essentially denying one of the most well-known benefits of vaccinations right now.
A vaccine, you're getting a shot, and this shot is going to be a little bit of the virus or bacteria or pathogen, and it's going to have your body build immunity to it or build antibodies to it. So if you get exposed to a wild virus, then you may be able to mount a defense and you may not be as sick. Does that mean you're less of a carrier? No! So tell these people to wake up, use actual science, use actual data, and stop being fear-based.
Let's pretend that you're right, which you're not. You just admitted and acknowledged that vaccinations can prevent and fight off diseases. Even if it can't prevent the disease from spreading, why wouldn't we still use it? It would still serve a great purpose just from the disease prevention, like you mentioned. You're not going off actual science or any sort of logical reasoning. You've already arrived at the conclusion that you wanted, and now you're trying to twist shit up to convince other people of the same thing. That is completely dishonest, and I hope you learn the truth someday.